Hi everybody, it's Julie Ebersol for ellenhutson.com and welcome to Hello Monday. Today I'm going to be sharing some products and supplies that I think are essential for beginning stampers. And I'm just going to share a little bit about why I find these so valuable for somebody who's just starting out. The first thing I would recommend doing is determining what kinds of cards you want to send. Are they birthday, thank you, get well, thinking of you? Think of the most common occasions for which you'd like to make and send cards, and then determine which images best suit the type of cards you want to send. So maybe flowers are not, up your alley, but I'm going to be using the Mondo hydrangea set in my demonstration today. But find images that appeal to you for the types of cards you want to send. And then you also need a very good all occasion greeting set that has a lot of different situations for which you could use the sentiments in. And this set by Hero Arts is a perfect example of a very versatile greeting set because the images are the perfect size to squeeze in on just about any layout, and they cover pretty much every occasion. Another thing to determine is how you're going to mount your clear stamps. And I think it's nice to have a variety of blocks. I certainly do. And I think this gives you a really nice selection for just about any size stamp. For the really big ones, you're going to need a considerably bigger block. But, unless you're moving up to the big background stamps, you can probably get by for quite a while on this assortment of clear blocks. Another option for mounting your clear stamps is to use the MISTI, and it may surprise you that I would suggest this type of a tool because it is more on the expensive side, but it is invaluable for anybody who works with clear stamps. I have found that it has saved lots of projects because if I didn't get it inked properly the first time, I can just re-ink and stamp over the top. I don't drop a stamp on my project and ruin it and have to start all over. So it has really saved a lot of valuable time and supplies, and I would heartily recommend it if you can fit that into your budget. And you don't have to start with both of them. I use both of them interchangeably, but if you could only get one, I would save up and get the original size MISTI because it will give you the most flexibility as far as size and the way you can orient your paper and your stamps to get maximum value out of the tool. Now, a great multi-purpose ink for any beginner to start with, I would recommend VersaFine Onyx Black. It's a great, deep, rich black. It has the versatility of being a faster drying pigment ink. It works great on a variety of porous type paper surfaces, including watercolor paper, not just cardstock. And you can use water-based mediums to color over the top. Now, I think one of the very best coloring mediums or tools any beginning stamper or even advanced stamper can have in their toolbox is a set of water-based markers. Now, these markers are twin-tipped. They're by Zig, and they have a nice, flexible, and durable rubber brush nib at one end and then a fine writing tip at the other, and you can do a lot of different things with these markers. So I would strongly recommend getting a set of markers so that you have a whole rainbow at your disposal and a lot of different options for using them. I would also recommend getting a Pentel water brush. This is my favorite water brush to work with, and the great thing about it is that you can combine that with the markers to create some wonderful watercolor effects. And a spray mister is also a good tool, and you're going to see what I'm talking about here when I start doing my demonstration. All right, let's talk paper. A good basic paper to start with would be the Neenah Solar White. I love the 80-pound and the 110-pound. I probably use the 110-pound most exclusively, even more so than the 80-pound. But if you're just starting out and you want to try and experiment to decide which of these cardstocks is a good weight for you, you can get them in 25-sheet packs. And the 80-pound is a good starter, and then you may eventually want to move up to the 110-pound because it's a very nice, sturdy, luxurious feeling cardstock. And if you're using water-based coloring mediums, you're going to find watercolor paper comes in very handy, and I would suggest the Canson watercolor paper. This is my go-to watercolor paper because I can cut it to quarter sheets and layer it onto my Neenah Solar White base cards. It's great paper for watercolor work. Now you're going to need some cutting tools, and my go-to trimmer is the Tonic Guillotine or Bypass trimmer, but it doesn't have the capability of scoring cardstock, so I also use the Martha Stewart Mini Scoreboard to score my cards in half and get a nice crisp line there for when I fold my cards. But you can also use the Fiskars Deluxe paper trimmer. It has a nice aluminum rail, and it can cut and score because of the two different attachments that they have there. And so you kind of get two in one. And that trimmer can accommodate 12 by 12 paper, whereas the Tonic Guillotine can only accommodate up to 8.5 or 9 inches, I think. So anyway, that's kind of something you have to decide for yourself. But these are two great options for cutting and scoring your cardstock for making your cards. Moving on to sticky business, you're going to need some type of an instant tape runner or adhesive for layering things together. I like these two by Thermoweb. They're very small and compact, and you get quite a bit of adhesive on each of these dispensers. So I use these kind of interchangeably. I also use mini glue dots for securing any embellishments that are a little bit chunkier. And I also like the foam squares by Scrapbook Adhesives for creating 3D effects on my card. So anytime you want to trim something out and pop it up, this is a great foam dot for using. And they come in two different sizes. They have the little tiny squares and then the, twice the size squares. So you've got options there with that. It's kind of important to clean your stamps in between changing ink colors. So I like using the Stamp Chamois by Lawn Fawn. It's just great. It doesn't leave any fibers behind on your stamps, and I just keep it wet. I run it under the tap water and squeeze out the excess, and I keep it handy on my desk for wiping off ink to change ink colors or before I put my stamps away. And if I have anything that's really stubborn, that's hard to get off of my stamps, then I might use Ultra Clean and a toothbrush to get in there and scrub stuff out of the nooks and crannies for those stubborn inks. So I'm going to share a couple of techniques here for using the markers and the stamp set that I've chosen here. And I'm going to take the original Misty and open that up and load it with a 1/4 sheet of watercolor paper. I like to stamp on the smoother side, but depending on how things go, you can always flip it over and stamp on the rough side if you need to. I'm going to be using the large flower and this leaf, and I'm going to just position them where I want them on the watercolor paper, and then I can close the lid and transfer. And once I have those mounted, I can go ahead and start inking up. And I'm going to be using VersaFine Onyx Black to do my inking. I'm going to be doing some watercolor work with those Zig Art Graphic Twin markers, and this ink will work well for that. You do need to give it a little bit of time to dry before you start watercoloring. So just a few minutes of waiting, or you can zap it with a heat gun if you happen to have a heat gun. But this is going to be pretty good to go. And I'm going to set it aside for a few minutes while I show you another technique. And then by the time I'm done with the other one, this will be dry and ready to do my watercolor work. So I've cleaned off the stamps with my Stamp Chamois and some water. And now I'm going to ink up with some Zig Art Graphic Twin markers. And I'm just using some colors of blue and greens to get the leaves. And I've held my marker at a horizontal angle so that the widest part of the brush nib is going across the stamp, and then I just misted it with some water from that Nuvo spray mister. And then I'm just going to go ahead and close the lid, and then when I open it back up, you'll see I've got this watercolored looking flower. And then I'm going to clean it off quickly one more time with the Stamp Chamois and then dry it a little bit, because I decided I wanted to add some deeper tones to get more shading, and I'm going to color directly on the stamp. And one of the great things about these markers is that you can choose exactly where you want to put your different colors, because that brush nib can get into tight spaces very specifically. So you have a lot of options for getting very specific areas of your stamp image colored. So I went ahead and spritzed it and stamped again, and I'm going to set it aside to dry while I come back to the one that I stamped in black. So the VersaFine Onyx Black ink is dry now, and I'm ready to do some more watercoloring. But this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those Art Graphic Twin markers and I'm just going to rub them against an acrylic block, and then I'm going to take my Pentel water brush, which has water loaded into the barrel. You squeeze it to get the water flowing a little bit, and then you can go ahead and pick up that ink color and start coloring in your image. And you'll notice that you're not smearing that black ink. You've got this nice, crisply, deeply saturated outline image that you can fill in with color. And I'm just going to go ahead and continue picking up color from that acrylic block and using my brush pen or my water brush there to spread the color around. And then I just wipe it off onto a piece of paper towel to get it clean if I need to switch colors. And I decided I wanted to add some yellow. So I just cleaned off that area of the block so I had a fresh spot to lay down some yellow. and then pick up that color again with the aquash and just start filling in those areas there. So this is a great way to get a watercolor effect. You've got several different watercolor effects using the Art Graphic twin markers. Now, once these are dry, you can see the difference between the two different effects and how you have that versatility and option when you're using those markers. Now, to finish off my cards, I'm going to score my cardstock. I have a half sheet of Neenah Solar White. This is 110 pound. And I'm going to use my scoreboard here to go ahead and get that score line. My little thing that stores the scoring blade kind of it broke off when I was traveling with my tools, so it's kind of loose, but it can self-store. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and trim these cards down to square. I decided I wanted to have a square card. I'm going to save the excess that I cut off of the A2 cards that I had made, and you'll see why in a minute. And then I'm going to trim down the watercolor panels as well. And these are going to end up being 4 inches square. And sometimes I rotate the paper just to get what I feel is the best vantage point of the image on that piece of watercolor paper. Now I decided I wanted to add a greeting, and I want to add it right over the top of the one that I did the misting with, and I had to let it dry completely. And then I'm going to take a greeting from that Hero Art set, the many messages, and going to grab a thank you. It's very bold, and I wanted to stamp it directly on there. So I went ahead and grabbed my mini Misty, which is great for doing things like sentiments very quickly when you need to. And I lined it up. I knew exactly where it was going to go. Again, inked up with VersaFine Onyx Black, stamped over the top, and got a perfect impression. And then I took the scrap that I had cut off the base cards and went ahead and loaded that into the Mini Misty. I'm going to re-ink again and go ahead and stamp that onto my scrap. And you'll see what I'm going to do with these here in a second. So now that I've got that all ready to go, all I have to do is finish off my cards. I'm going to trim that out. A good pair of scissors are these scissors by EK Success. They are precision scissors, and they're perfect for detail cutting, and I use mine all the time. In fact, I actually have 2 pairs because I will cry if I ever lose one of them. And I'm going to adhere these watercolor panels to the base cards, and I'm using these tape runners by Thermoweb. Like I said, I really like them because they're very small and compact, and they have a lid that flips up and closes over the top, and it doesn't get lost because it's attached to the dispenser. And I just find that they fit very comfortably in my hand. And on this card, I wanted to pop up the sentiment, so I'm just going to grab some of those foam dots by Scrapbook Adhesives. And as you can see, they've got 2 different sizes of those squares, and I'm just going to go ahead and grab 3 of these to pop onto the back of my sentiment. And I have tweezers here. Tweezers are not necessarily an essential, but I use them all the time, so hey, maybe you want to get yourself a pair of tweezers. Went ahead and popped that up on the card front, and I did it that way on that image because I knew on that card it would stand out better if I popped it up, whereas on the other card it looks just fine stamped right over the top of the hydrangeas. And here you can see the 2 different designs, 2 different looks using all the same supplies, and so it's a great way to get started as you're building up your different tools and supplies. And I would recommend, the very most important things are stamps, ink, and paper, and then some very basic tools to get started. We have more still shots available at the Classroom blog, and all the supplies are available at ellenhutson.com. Thanks for watching.